want to make sure. Sweet. Thanks, Ryan. Welcome to Maine School Garden Days, number 2 of 6. During these monthly learning opportunities, school garden leaders such as yourselves will be discussing and learning about different topics related to school gardens. And there will also be a tour featured at every month. And I just wanted to briefly thank some of our sponsors. This is just some sponsors, but we equally appreciate everyone. So Fedco Seeds, Maine Agriculture in the Classroom, and Maine Organic Farmers and Gardeners Association. So in last month's iteration of Maine School Garden Days, we learned about organizing around summer maintenance, and we took a tour of the East End Community School Garden. In today's session, it's called Planning Ahead, Back to School Gardens and Nutrition Education Connections. And for those of you following the agenda, Ryan, I don't know if you already did that. Can't quite see the chat. You'll be able to see the agenda for yourselves for anybody who likes to follow agendas. And that's in a Google Doc. Cool. So I'm just going to run through our agenda very briefly. Here we are. So pretty soon, I'd like to take just a couple moments to acknowledge the land that we live, work, play, and garden on. And then we're going to hear from a few lovely presenters. First, we'll hear from Richard Hodges on a pre-recorded video talking about the Back to School Garden program. Then we will view a garden tour of the Alfond Youth and Community Center Gardens with Mike Owens. And lastly, we will experience the nutrition education connections with Kingfield Elementary School, and that'll be with Laura and Selena. Okay. I'm gonna move your beautiful faces for a little bit. So first, I'd just like to take a moment to recognize the beautiful land that we live, work, play, and garden on. Let us be grateful for this, but also aware of the heavy history and still current ways in which people of European descent have unrightfully and forcefully taken land that isn't theirs. This land was and is traditionally cultivated by the tribes of the Wabanaki Confederacy, and that the Confederacy is currently composed of the Maliseet, Mi'kmaq, Penobscot, and Passamaquoddy tribes. But you will see here on this picture that for thousands of years, several more tribes were in this kind of Wabanaki Confederacy area, and not just in, the place we call Maine today. Wabanaki loosely translates to people of the dawnland or first light. May we all stand in solidarity with our Native neighbors, follow their example, and teach in ways that uplift stories, languages, and gardening techniques of the Wabanaki people. At this moment, I'd just like to take a brief pause in honor of the Wabanaki peoples. Wonderful. Thank you all. Okay. So I think I might be talking fast because we're running a little ahead of schedule, which is just fine. We'll have more opportunity for networking with each other. So let's begin with a video by Richard Hodges in partnership with the Coast of Maine Organic Products. Thank you, Ryan, for that link. I want to make sure that I'm just stopping to share real quick because I remembered something about Zoom that I should do. Thank you to Ryan. And that is to optimize for video clips. So you can all hear. Okay. Back to school gardens.
Great. So we demonstrated a back-to-school garden where we're using the craft paper that I adore. And I do the same procedure at my home market garden. All that we did was lay down 3 to 4 layers of paper. If it's a windy day, make sure there's rocks on it. And then what you're going to want to do is just lay down a couple inches of compost on top of that. The benefit of this really finished coastal Maine compost is that you can seed into it. If it's a less finished compost, you're going to want to put some other medium that you're going to seed into. Otherwise, those seeds will have too much to compete with to germinate. We're privileged to work with some Black Dakota popping corn seeds from Troy Howard Middle School. They have a great seed saving program, and they took great care in growing these seeds. We have a lot of faith in their germination, so we're just planting 1 seed every 8 inches. But we planted out the popcorn seeds, proper spacing, so that the popcorn would be in a block and the pollination can happen. And then the idea is that you can water that. It's kind of set it and forget it for the season because popping corn can be somewhat drought resistant. Same with pumpkins. We had a little corner for the pumpkins. You know, if you had a larger bed, you can do this along the edge. So you plant the pumpkins on the edge, and you want that to spill over. And the middle of the bed will be taken up by the popping corn. And then the idea is that you come back in September, you harvest the popping corn that could have even dried on the stalk over the whole season. And same with the pumpkin. It's fine if the pumpkin vine dies, as long as the squirrels don't get to the pumpkins, which they might, then you'll have pumpkins to harvest. And so the idea is that you have something to harvest when you get back to school. It's fine if it's dried on the vine. It's somewhat drought resistant. If you don't end up with much, it's not a big deal because it's really geared towards planting in September, where we're working with farmers to make cold hardy vegetable seedlings available. Great time to plant is September. Kale, lettuce, chard, hardy herbs. You can plant that, and then with the help of some row cover, you can grow that right through December and create a lot of nutrient-dense greens for the cafeteria and the salad bar. So we want these kids to enjoy the fruits of their labor, and this is one great way. If you plant it in September, you can easily see quickly the benefit of growing your own food.
Hey,
Lovely. So that was Richard Hodges, everyone. And Richard Hodges is the founder and program manager of Retrias. He became inspired to create, orchards in schools through many experiences as an outdoor educator and farmer in Maine, New Hampshire, Vermont, California, and Costa Rica. Richard has been on the board of Maine School Garden Network for 7 years, is a master gardener, a certified permaculture designer, and graduate of Maine Sustainable Food System Leadership Institute. So Richard isn't able to join us on the live Zoom today, but he and the Coast of Maine Organic Products have been partnering to introduce the back to school garden programs at various pilot schools. And I'd like to take a minute here to introduce Willie, and she will she has a little bit of knowledge, and in addition to other Maine School Garden Network board members who have more knowledge about the Back to School Garden program, and then we can take question and answers as to the best of our ability. So I will stop sharing.
Hi, everyone. I have been working with Richard on this project for some years. It was a brainchild of his, and it seemed to work really well, and especially with folks that had a problem keeping the gardens watered and maintained through the summer. So this was a technique that he is sharing with folks to try to help them have a little lighter load in the summer if that's a problem for you. So we have been working on a pilot. Maine Ag in the Classroom had the pleasure of supporting a pilot last year, and it went really well. And when I talked to Richard yesterday, he wanted to tell you he's sorry that he couldn't be with us today, but he had a few points that he'd like me to share. Many of you know, and many of you, I think, have benefited from the Coast of Maine compost project. They donate 10 bags of compost to school gardens. And it has been a great benefit for a lot of school gardens. They donated to over 100 school gardens last year. Now, that project is finished for 2021. And but you can go online and you can sign up for 2022. So I suggest that you do that because I'm sure that there is a list, and I'm sure that they have a limited amount of resources. So it's a first come, first serve. Now, if you're making compost at school or you're getting compost elsewhere, that's absolutely fine as well. Just make sure that it's finished. If it's still warm, you heard Richard say you need to put in something else to start your seeds. So around the areas where you're putting your seeds in, if you're using unfinished compost, make sure you have like a seed starting mix or a potting soil. Your seeds get a good start. And then now, when you're still in school and you have students there, make sure you water this quite vigorously and soak in that paper so that it composts and the roots from the seeds that you are planting can work into that paper. Now, popping corn, he mentioned it a little bit about pollination, and most of you realize that corn pollinates from the tassel on the top down to the ears. So you probably need to put that in a block. You don't want to make long straight rows. And he wanted me to mention that to you. You'll have better pollination if you put that in a block sort of in the middle of the bed. And then the last thing he asked me to mention is please reach out to him. If you're working with this project, or you're starting or gonna pilot it at your school, whether it's this year or next year, he is currently, and we all are, working on funding and supporting through farmers growing these seedlings and different ways of supporting the Back to School Garden project. And the more schools, the better. So if you are working on it, send him a note. Ryan put his email in the chat and let him know what we're doing. And so that we can work collaboratively with possibly schools around your area that are doing the same thing, or funding in the area, different things like that. So, and we'll try. I'm sure Ryan can help too if anybody has any questions.
Thank you for that. I'm curious if anybody here has worked with Back to School Gardens or has utilized similar techniques in their own school garden or just garden spaces.
We just planted corn this season for the first time in our school garden because we have more space this year. So it's something that we've never grown before, but we just planted this season. And I was happy to hear you say to plant the corn in blocks in the middle of the bed, because that's exactly what we did. So that was a good affirmation there. And we did it in the fashion of a Three Sisters bed. So we have corn, beans, and squashes in that bed.
I love that. At Albert S. Hall's school, they're also doing a Three Sisters bed. I, for a little while, I was serving with Indian Township School with Food Corps, and we created some beds and kind of experimented with how to make the Three Sisters beds. And I was at Indian Township School with people of the Passamaquoddy tribe, and I felt grateful to kind of like learn from them. And I don't know, we may have planted the corn a little bit early, because the idea is for like the pole beans to climb up the corn, and I think that the beans kind of strangled out the corn, but it was still a beautiful garden space, and still loved like learning from all of them. So much wisdom. Mike, I see that you're unmuted.
Just had been the whole time. Sorry, I'm in a quiet office, so.
Oh, cool. Other thoughts about the back to school garden program? It's a pretty cool technique, and I'd be curious to learn more about the pilot schools and how to like get more involved with the program. I think it's a really great idea to plant something and kind of set it and forget it for the most part, and then come back at the beginning of the school year and potentially have a crop to harvest. And if not, that's okay too. It goes back into the earth, and you can plant your leafy greens in the fall when school has returned. But it's all an experiment in the end, so I'm excited to learn more. Yes, and don't be afraid to reach out to Richard. He said he'd be happy to talk with you, and if you're even interested in having a back to school garden and having his help setting that up, I'm sure he'd be happy to have that conversation. Wonderful. Well, if any questions pop up in your head, feel free to put them in the chat. Otherwise, we can move right on ahead. Ooh. I see something from Ryan. Another good long season crop is dry bush beans. They also dry in the plant, so they don't need much attention. As long as they're weed free, yep. That's a good point. Okay, let's see. What's next here? Next up, we have a garden tour of the Alfond Youth and Community Center gardens. Okay.
How you doing? I'm Mike Owens, Greenhouse and Garden Coordinator at the Alfond Youth and Community Center. Just giving you guys a tour of the kids' garden today and of the Mary Nash Beaupre Greenhouse. So what we have here, this year is a little different with COVID. Without COVID, we have around 200 kids a day. We're the largest licensed childcare in the state. We take kids usually from 2 o'clock to 6 o'clock every day. But now, because of COVID, we have kids here from 7 o'clock to 5:30 every day. Numbers have gone down. It's usually around 50 a day right now. But our goal is to teach kids about gardening and how to grow your own food, and the importance of that. The kids come off the bus right where I'm at right now. They come in and they enter the building, check in, have lunch, come back out and work with me for about an hour each day. We have kids broken up by grade level, from kindergarten all the way up to 13-year-olds. We also do have a preschool program inside as well. The kids this year are starting a cut flower program, so you'll see flowers everywhere on the outside of the fences and also across the street at our community garden that we started last year. I think it's 500 linear feet of cut flower space. So we have our greenhouse here that we use year round. We grow everything from seed right inside and then plant it outside in our garden rows. This year we're going to have a big seedling sale. So currently our greenhouse is plumb full of seedlings. We're a lot luckier than most of you school garden groups. We are year round. So when you guys put everything to bed right around now, we're really just getting started. We're about a week or two behind of what we normally are. Last year, this garden kind of got not as maintained as it should have been. We created the garden across the street and really focused on that. So this garden is plumb full of weeds this year. We added a bunch more compost, soil, and a few other amendments to our rows, increased the size of them, and really just started planting the other day, or last week actually. We have carrots that are sprouting right here. Our garlic came up very, very well from the fall that we planted. We have 3 or 4 different kinds of potatoes that are just sprouting as well. And our onions are just kind of picking up pace after having a couple kids walk through them the day after we planted them. That's why you see the stringed up rows, because the kids come off the bus after school pretty amped up and then run to that door. Anything in these 2 rows can get trampled pretty well, and after the first day of planting they did. So the onions are just coming back to life, along with the weeds. So next week we'll be doing quite a bit of weeding as well. Yesterday we planted our green beans in that row. That's actually probably the most popular crop that we grow. When we harvest that, not many of them make it inside. The kids are eating the beans just as we go, and I'm sure you guys know all about that. We have a bunch of seedlings of flowers that are going to be put across the street. Probably do some of that this weekend, and then we'll finish that next week. With the dome, it's kind of tricky to get pollinators inside, so we surround the dome with flowers. Right now you can see our gladiolas popping up, but there also is a bee mix in there that'll sprout with things such as Orlea and Amy and other flowers that help attract the bees. So once the bees make it to the dome, the goal is to get them inside. We have the 2 doors usually open when anyone's around. If not, we have our screen doors that shut, but we do have windows that are open. If you can go to the top of the roof, we have our vents that are there. Those are always open, and luckily the bees do tend to come in there, which is nice. The 3 vents you'll see have the black pistons. Inside those pistons is beeswax. So we're very lucky in that this is climate controlled. When the sun heats those pistons above, I believe it's 62 degrees, it starts to expand. When it expands, it opens up those vents. So I don't have to come in on the weekend and open up all the windows because this dome does it for me. There are also 5 window vents along the side with fans in them that are temperature controlled. So when the sun comes up on the east side, the 2 vents along this side will be warmed up through the same system with the black piston with the beeswax inside. The warmer it gets, the vent opens right up. This one's been in the sun all day, so it's opened up completely. As the day goes on, the sun will go on, and the vents throughout the dome will all open up and blow the cooler air inside. We have, I think, 6 or 7 big fans in here to help circulate that air and get the warm air right out the top. Another great feature of the dome is it kind of has a little geothermal aspect to it. We have our pond here, which is a thermal heat sink. So it's painted black. It's actually chalkboard paint right now. So during the winter, the kids use chalk and paint on it and do whatever they want when they're not planting. But during the winter, this is black and it absorbs that sun's energy. It heats up the water, and then at the end of the night, releases and radiates that warm air, help heat up the greenhouse. During the summer, it's just the opposite. Helps absorb a lot of that warm air, helps cool off the greenhouse. That's why we have the fans blowing off of it. And in the back, there's actually 2 black tubes back there that circulate all the way around the dome and go at the bottom of the raised beds to 2 boxes that are on the other side of the dome over there that have fans in it. Those fans are powered by a solar panel on the top, and it is taking the air from the pond and circulating it along the bottom of the raised beds and up to the front of the greenhouse. So during the winter, the pond is the warm area. So it's taking that warm air from the pond, keeping the beds from freezing, and putting that warm air up front to the greenhouse where it's the coldest. During the summer, it's just the opposite. It's the cold air, it's circulating that along the bottom of the beds and bringing it up to the front of the greenhouse where it's always the warmest. And it also helps bring the moisture over there because it's always very moist by the pond, and during the summer it can get very dry during the front of the greenhouse with our bricks that we have on the bottom. The bricks are great during the winter, not so much during the summer. That's why we grow walls of green. As you can see on the far side over here, we have our cucumbers growing. So most of the time, our whole greenhouse will be covered with cucumbers and a few tomatoes. Our cucumbers will grow probably 10 feet tall, and then